just love that intro. They decided to play it twice. I've yet to know why, but your guess is just as good as mine. It's a nice little jingle, though, for a Friday. Good morning. It is Friday, April 26th. We have a fantastic show here for you. The news, headlines, the weather report, today in history, and also we have Nadia, the face of Friday. In this show, we are going to play an interview that I did with Susan Baird, a resident of Keystone Place at Buzzards Bay, to learn why she switched to an assisted living community. And also, as I mentioned, Nadia Karitnakova, my favorite Russian, is in the building this morning to digest the week's news and events. And last but not least, we have Alan Slavin, your favorite selectman, joining us for the coffee segment. Alan is not in the building yet, but we are crossing our fingers, expecting him anytime soon now. But before we get to any of that, let's take this moment to thank Not Your Average Antiques, an antique shop down Cranberry Highway in East Wareham, for donating the props that you see in the morning show. So stay tuned because the weather, the traffic, and the news headlines are next. Well, what kind of weekend this is? It's just going to be rain, 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 rain. If you're thinking of curling your hair, straightening your hair, forget it. Okay, so for today, we are looking at rainfall. Around a quarter of an inch we're expecting. We're going to see a high of 55 degrees, and tonight temperatures will drop to 52. Not that much. Keep your windows open. Winds will be 15 to 25 miles per hour with high wind gusts a possibility. Showers will continue to tomorrow with high of 57 and low around 40 degrees. Sunday, sunny and partly cloudy, increasing clouds with showers later in the day, high of 56 and low around 38 degrees. And of course, the weather conditions are great. Trouble, trouble, trouble. Anyways, now to the news. There were a few news stories over the week, and here are the headlines. Well, Wareham Week had a vacation, so we decided to go back to our friends at Wicked Local Wareham. And Wicked Local Wareham had the following stories. We are going to start with new Wareham gas station proposed on Cranberry Highway. A proposal for a new gas station at the current Maxi gas location, 2416 Cranberry Highway, went before the Zoning Board of Appeals on Wednesday night. The plan, drawn by Southborough-based Bowler Engineering, is for 5 double-sided pump stations, 33 parking spots, and a mini mart. ZBA board members and town engineer Charlie Rowley expressed concerns about the entrances and exits, positions of some parking spaces, and lighting. Member Jane Kendrick asked for the removal of the parking spots close to entrances, a request backed by members Jim Ekobachi and by Jim Ekobachi, also asked by Jean Ekobachi. And also, the president of ZBA, Nazi El-Kolasi, asked for the company to reduce the planned 25-foot high to the town's required 18 feet. The hearing was continued to May 8th. And we're going to move on to our second news of the day, and that is marijuana retailer Verlife's parking proposal postponed to May 8th in Wareham. A proposal by marijuana retailer Verlife to set up parking in recently cleared area on Main Street was continued again by the Zoning Board of Appeals to May 8th. The proposal by Verlife's corporate owner, Pharmacans is for a lot along the Wareham River that borders Bessie Park and the British Landing condominiums. The plan is for the lot to be used by retail customers at the marijuana dispensary for 2 years, while a small lot behind the Main Street building is available for medical customers. Meanwhile, the company scouts for a new dispensary location in Wareham. And to our last news of the day, Senator Mark Pacheco, a Democrat from Taunton, has announced that local farming operations in Wareham, Carver, and Middleborough will receive more than $150,000 in agriculture, climate, resilience, and efficiency grants. The grant program assists farm with installing practices that help mitigate their impacts on climate change and also adapt to changing climate conditions. And that's all for the news headlines this morning. Stay with us. We'll be right back with Nadia. We welcome Nadia Karitnakova, our weekly news correspondent, in the studio to cover this week's news and events. Welcome, Nadia.
Hi, Quinn.
Hi, how you doing?
Great, thanks.
You look lovely.
Thanks. As are you.
Oh, thank you. It was funny. You said you watched some of the shows in the past.
Yes.
And somehow you looked like we just copied one image and pasted it throughout the shows.
I have a habit of wearing the same thing on Friday and doing my hair in the same day, on the same way on Fridays.
Oh, okay. So that tells you this is my Friday look.
Yes.
Okay.
So I need to change that.
You need to change it up.
Yes.
You got to give us your flavor, your weekly flavor. So what is this? This is a Monday look normally?
No, this is like my favorite look. It's just a blue jacket with blue blaze.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think I look professional in it.
Oh, you look stunning.
Thanks.
Well, welcome back. It's Friday. Mm-hmm. Tell us what Wareham Week has been up to. So,
as I like to say it, sun's out, trash bags out. Over the weekend, Don't Trash Wareham will hold a fifth annual cleanup, and during which residents will be able to, they can do it every day, but on Saturday and Sundays, everyone will be participating in cleaning the town.
Yes.
And last year, 400 people participated. This year, Don't Trash Wareham is hoping to get 500 people.
Fantastic.
Yes.
Actually, the program or the idea, I believe, was initiated by
Nora Bickey.
Yes.
Oh, and
Selectman Alan Slavin.
Yes. And as you said, our favorite Selectman Alan Slavin is going to be there, and as well as Mary Bruce.
Okay.
Yes.
Fantastic. So yeah, it seems like the program is popular. When I first heard of Don't Trash Wareham, I liked the idea, but I didn't think it was feasible. I didn't think that people are really going to, do the trash that you bring in, you should take the same amount out. I thought it would be a lot to keep track who brings what and who takes out what. What did you think?
Well, I believe if they don't keep track of how much trash they collect. So once you're given trash bags, and once you fill these trash bags, you just tie them up, put them on the side road, and throughout the next few days, the car will pick them up.
Okay. Now, in the summer, and they did this, and they're trying to clean up the beaches in the summer because people would come and like our beaches are all free. We don't charge a fee. And people would log all this food, diapers if they have young ones, and then they will leave and leave everything there.
Yes.
Or the trash barrels will overfill and you just see trash hanging around the trash barrels. So they did that, and I can see a little bit of change, but did you speak to anybody in the committee on how they're looking to improve the program?
Well, there already has been improvement because I talked to a few of the organizers, and they said that every single year less and less trash is collected. It's a small step, but still less trash accumulates on the street. And also it's interesting that you mentioned the progress, because in 2015 Don't Trash Wareham collected 4,600 cigarette butts on Wareham beaches, and after that the Board of Health banned smoking on Wareham beaches altogether. Yes, so that's a huge progress, I think.
Fantastic. All right, so we got that event coming up soon, and what's next?
Also, I wanted to say that it's very important to participate in Cleanup Day because Wareham has 54 miles of coastline along with rivers and other ponds where turtles, fish, and flowers live, because flowers are living things to. And obviously the trash that gets into the water gets into the food stream and can potentially kill the wildlife.
Now, in the summer, are they looking to have these cleanup days more frequently?
I haven't heard of any yet. Yes, I know this is an annual event. I'm not sure about other cleanup days.
I mean, all these kids, summer break, what the heck are they doing? Take them out there, start cleaning, right?
I agree, yes.
All right, what's our next story?
So I also wanted to mention that on Tuesdays, pet owners will be able to vaccinate their pets.
Yes.
And I wanted to mention, on Tuesday, April 30th, on 186 Onset Avenue. And I wanted to mention that because generally vaccines are very expensive, but on that days, owners will be able to get their pets vaccinated for only $14. Yes.
That's very good because the vaccines are expensive, and some would make the argument I couldn't do it because I couldn't afford it, but it's only $14.
Yes.
Walk-ins are welcome, and so you can make an appointment if your time is a little bit restricted. I was reading a little bit on the rabies, and yes, actually it's harmful to both pets and humans, and there's a vaccine for humans to take as well. But the two people, when I was reading most recently, one 2012, gentleman died after only a month of illness from rabies. Yeah,
it's actually a long time. You can die sooner than 1 month. It's a very dangerous disease, extremely dangerous.
And people, I think, if anything, and I know people know what rabies is, but I think we should bring more and more programs on what rabies is, how you can get infected, and what to do once that happens, and what the signs, how could you tell that you've been infected? Of course, if you're bitten by any wild animal, you should
scratched.
seek help. Yeah, or scratch, you should seek help. And another thing they said, to not take a wild animal and have it as a pet.
Oh, no. Well, you can take stray dogs and first take it to the vet. I'm not sure, you're not allowed to take wild animals in general because it's dangerous in the first place. But if we're talking about stray cat and dog, first take it to the vet. So it can get cleaned up and vaccinated.
Now, people, and I know people who have taken in raccoons.
I've never heard
them as pets, I mean, they're adorable. I love them too. Now I'm thinking, but as cute as they can be, and they're not very tamed. You see videos on Facebook, my pet raccoon, little plump little raccoon, right? But these animals are dangerous, and they can really infect not only you, your family. So just leave the wild animals to be wild, right?
Yes.
Very good. And you have something else for us?
Yes, I wanted to announce that as of Sunday, April 21st, the Stop and Shop strike is over. So the strike lasted for 11 days. And on Monday, employees return to Stop and Shop to their normal working hours.
Fantastic! I went to Shaw's. Oh my God, they barely had any seafood, and that was after Easter, and I know what happened. But okay, so their doors are open. Now, did you go back and speak to the Stop and Shop workers to see if they are content with the agreement? What do they feel?
I haven't spoken to them. No, I haven't, to be honest. But after the agreement was reached, the Stop and Shop and United Food and Commercial Workers International Union, they did not agree to disclose the full details of agreement. But I want to say that the union released a statement on their website that said, I want to read, the agreement presents healthcare and retirement benefits, provides wages increase, and maintains take and a half pay on Sundays for current members. So that's all information they gave us.
So, in other words, what they were fighting for, picketing for, they got it?
They got it, but we don't have the full details. They do not disclose it.
Okay, well,
Yes.
good for them. They stood for what they believed in.
Yes, and according to, so apparently Ahold Delhaize owns Stop and Shop. It's a Dutch company, and they estimated that the strike cost the chain between $90 and $100 million due to the low sales during that time period.
Yeah, you figured maybe somebody could not get that car that they wanted.
Yes.
They're like, heck with the strike, give them what they want.
Yes.
All right, very good. So this has been an active community. Also, you attended your first town meeting.
Yes.
And because of you, we decided to have it for 2 days. So, to just get you
Make sure I got all the details.
So how entertaining was it?
To be honest, it was complicated to me because I don't know much of the town history, but I have a plan to figure out what happened over the next week. My editor and I were talking over the details together. I think I knew what was going to happen before I attended the meeting, but at the meeting I still was a little bit confused.
Yeah.
But I'm on my way to figure everything out.
Yeah, not to cheat, but I would recommend buying a select man a cup of coffee or any other committee members.
Yes.
Keep inviting them for a cup of coffee. Okay, what's your job? This article. What you're thinking about it, maybe to help you soak your brain in some of these things so they don't just... Because I've read your article, and I'm like, oh my goodness, how could she summarize all these minutes? 3 hours and a half, But good for you. Congratulations.
Thanks,
You're
Queen.
still here.
Yes.
You haven't packed your bags yet.
Oh, no, of course not.
Of course not.
Yeah.
Of course not. Maybe you're the key.
Perhaps.
Perhaps. Well, thank you.
Thank you,
And
Queen.
that was our weekly correspondent, Nadia Karitnakova, in the studio to digest this week's news and the events. Stay with us because I have a video on the life in an assisted living, and it is Susan Bayard's story. Hello, Susan.
Hello.
I'm interested to hear about your experiences in an assisted living. So let's start with, when did you become a member in an assisted living? Not necessarily Keystone.
Almost a year ago.
And you came here straight from home, or?
Yes, I came straight from home. I had started looking at facilities in the area with my sister, and we looked at several, and my plan was to come this past spring. But things sort of fell into place. I had a condo to sell. It was not on the market yet, and someone came with an offer. The same week that I got this unanticipated offer, I had a call from Kelly telling me there was going to be an apartment opening. So the pieces just fell together about 6 to 8 months earlier than I had planned.
Okay. Now, why an assisted living? Why did you decide that I'm going to sell my condo and move into an assisted living?
I had been contemplating over the past couple of years. I had just lost some of the abilities I had at home. Walking became harder, but most of all it was the loss of most of the use of my right arm. So meal preparation was just really hard. I'd start out in the morning with a good plan for what I was going to fix for dinner, and then during the day I'd say, well, I guess I won't bother with that. Well, I guess I won't bother with that. And I came down to a lot of soup suppers because I just didn't have the energy to do the meal preparations. That was probably the biggest reason that I came into assisted living was just that and other activities of daily living, making the bed, changing the bed. And I had help once a week on changing the bed and cleaning, but it's a long time from one week to the next. And so you often have to do things that were just more than I could handle.
Okay. Now, how have your transition to an assisted living been?
The transition was much easier than I thought it was going to be. I was active at home. I was very active in a lot of programs that were put on by the Council of Aging, on Aging in Sandwich, and we had bus transportation there and back for those activities. So there were a group of us that did a number of things. And I also, at the condominiums, I was very active in the running of the condominiums. I was the clerk, so I was the go-to person for a lot of things. So when I came here, I really wasn't quite sure. I knew there were a lot of activities, wasn't sure what I was going to try, and I decided I looked at the calendar here and decided, well, I'll try everything that sounds the least bit appealing, at least once.
You mentioned something, I think it's important, that when you are planning on going to an assisted living, you looked at your furniture, said, what is important? What should I bring? When I spoke to other elderly folks about moving to an assisted living, those who are reluctant, they would mention that they're not ready to let go of their home, their condo. How about the furniture, all these memories? How do you sum up that journey of letting go?
Well, for me, it worked very, very well. Because for many of us that come from condominiums, we probably already did some of that decision-making when we left a house you cut down. And for me, it was I just found it so easy. I really had things that were important to me, but that I wasn't going to bring here, like a piano. I wasn't going to bring a piano, but yet I didn't want my piano to just go somewhere else. Well, when you start talking to family members, you'd be surprised what family members also value that they want of yours. So a piano went to a grandson, and different pieces of furniture that I didn't need anymore went to other relatives. So I didn't have to go through getting rid of them, because I didn't get rid of them. They just went to another part of the family.
Now, another part, again, speaking to other elderly people about moving to an assisted living, or those who decided to remain at home, one of the big factors is money. People always think about money. Can I afford an assisted living? And what I tell them that, okay, being in assisted living comes with different opportunities, such as somebody to watch over you. You mentioned you don't really have to, do laundry, but you want to do laundry. Other services that are here for you. How do you justify the price of paying an assisted living and what you receive, what you get back?
Well, I had looked at other places, so I had comparable ideas. And one place I looked at told me I had too much money for their situation.
You did not hear that a lot.
No, I kind of laughed at it because no one's ever told me I have too much money. But that was it was a different financial structure. Everything was very different. There's so much difference in the way, as a consumer, the way the finances appear. Some want a bigger down payment. Some do have restrictions. Fortunately, very fortunately, I had long-term care insurance that I got when I started employment at a recent place, and they said, you make this decision today. If you don't decide to take the insurance today, you do not have another chance. Well, thank goodness I did it, because that's covering the greater majority of my costs.
Okay, very well. What do you like about being here?
I like so much about being here. I like my apartment. It's me. It has my things in it. The amount of space is just right for me. So I like my own little quarters, but I also like the fact that I can go out of my door and pretty much any time and find something else to do. There's quite an activity schedule here that you pick and choose. When you first come, I tried lots of things that I thought, maybe in the future, but not right now. But you get to know the activities that suit you and the people that you want to be with. And So that's just been terrific for me. I wouldn't have those opportunities at home. It fascinates me here, the backgrounds of the people. You know, we all just didn't arrive here as old ladies and old men. We had this whole life before we ever got here, and it's just amazing to me the things that people have done or where they've lived, where they've traveled. We have a couple of people who come from abroad, and I don't know, it's just, you get these people, they're 80 years old. Well, they did a whole lot before they ever got here, and I find it fascinating.
So almost like life starts again. Right?
Well, I think it does. You know, we're all old, and I think one of the things that I had to get used to when I came is how often the ambulance is here. And I kept thinking, this is insane. The ambulance is here almost every day. Well, then you get to figure out, okay, for most people, it's a quick transport for an immediate problem. They fell, or they have a fever, or they don't have a family member to drive them to get the doctor's office or the urgent care. They go to the emergency room to get checked out. But how secure families must feel to know that kind of help is here. But that scared me, and it took me a while to accept the fact that for many of us, this will be our last address. And until I could accept that, I just kept thinking, everybody's getting sick, they're all dying. And then you think, well, yes, that's true, it's okay, you know, it's okay. Several people have been here many years, but.
Now, how did you come to peace with that?
Mostly with just talking to myself and realizing, you know, that first of all, meeting people who are 90 plus, we now have 100 plus, who are still having an active life and still making contributions and still having a life. And I still tease, we have a pair of rockers out on this porch, and they rock a lot when the wind, some of us say, oh, there's another soul trying to depart, and they just can't quite go. And so I think part of the way I adjusted to it was through humor. And then I was just realizing that, you know, this was happening in my own community, that people were dying. But I think now that I've been here almost a year, it's kind of like we just lost a friend here who was very dear to most of us, and it was very, very hard loss for all of us, the staff and and how I got used to it was you just sort of are able to talk about that person and what they meant to you here, and just the little things that made those people real. And yeah, there are those sad times too, but then you see other people who go out because they fell or something else, and they come back and they're okay, and life is good. But I think it is an adjustment to realize you're living in a community and I'm one of the younger people here. I mean, I'm 75, so there's, 85s, 95s, 100s, and so I just think, well, this is life. It really is life. And it also helps us, I think, reflect on our own passage of time. When we lose someone and they were close to us or we were fond of them, and you just think, well, it makes it, to me, more imperative that I use my time well.
We'll be right back after this short break. Welcome back. So, this is the morning show. We're broadcasting live from our WCTV studio in Wareham. The Good Morning Wareham, your source for local news, weather report, and extra information. And now for a moment in history. Let's take a look at where we were today in history. Okay, we are going to begin with some pretty somber news. In 1865, John Wilkes Booth dies 12 days after assassinating Abraham Lincoln. After shooting Lincoln, Booth jumped down from the balcony Lincoln was on, breaking his leg. He was on the run for almost 2 weeks, getting help from Confederate sympathizers. He ended up being found by the army, which burnt down the house he was hiding in and then shot him. And we're going to move to 1986. The worst nuclear accident occurred in Chernobyl in Ukraine. It is unknown how many people died from the accident, but tens of thousands of people got radiation poisoning. The area is still suffering from the fallout and will remain uninhabitable for at least 100 years. And now we are going to go to 1954 when the polio vaccine began trials in elementary school in Virginia. Concocted by scientist Jonas Salk, the vaccine has helped largely eradicate the disease that often ended up paralyzing those that it afflicted. And to our last historical fact of the day, we are celebrating a birthday. Channing Tatum is celebrating his birthday today. The popular actor turns 39 years old. And happy birthday to everybody else celebrating their big day today. That concludes our history segment. To learn more about cool historical facts, please go online under history.com. Stay with us. We'll be right back. The coffee segment is next. But first, let's take a look at our events calendar. welcome back. This is Good Morning Wareham, and we're filming live from our WCTV studio at 505 Main Street. This is the coffee segment, and with me is your favorite town selectman, Mr. Alan Slavin. Welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning. So I have invited you here to talk about the spring town meeting, the 2-day spring town meeting, and your take on how it went. So let's start with that.
Well, I had a nice time with Slavin versus Slavin quite often. Probably should have an interview of the two of us together. Could be quite interesting.
I kind of thought of that, but I didn't know if it was going to be too much for the morning show.
No, because one of us ends up sleeping over the garage, so it's fine.
Okay, so you thought it was a good time?
I had fun.
You had fun. Okay, so there were a lot of articles, but I have selected a few that I thought we could talk more about, and some of them are just procedural stuff.
Yep, most of them are.
Most of them, yeah. So let's start with the front yard storage, and that was Article 11. I know this article gives power to the health board, right?
Actually, it gives a tool to the basically the Inspection Services Department, to the Code Enforcement Officer. The problem has been that we will get complaints constantly there about people's stuff in their yards, etc. The Board of Health has some authority, fire department, etc. But basically the way it would go is you'd go to the magistrate with a complaint and it would kind of get thrown around and things just wouldn't happen. What this article does, it gives, under the regulations and stuff, the ability to find someone on a daily basis, which is what you have to do. People don't realize that. You don't get a fine once and it accumulates. You have to basically give them a violation every day, and they can then fine them up to $300 every day.
So give them a fine every day on the same subject, on the same thing, right?
Yep.
If they come tomorrow and it's still there, not taken care of, they can give you another fine.
Yeah, they could write you up again.
Up to $300 per day.
Per violation.
Wow.
And then that particular fine would actually be, instead of the way it normally does, go to court, it actually gets put on your tax bill.
Wow. Okay, that's a little different. And why did we choose to have it on your tax bill versus going to court and pay it?
Because that way there is a much more effective tool.
Okay. All right.
Simple as that.
So I could understand there was some pushback. The article did pass.
There was a lot of pushback during the public outreach. I was very surprised at town meeting. There was just a couple of people spoke against it, but overall it was passed quite easily.
And tell us about the pushback. Some of it obvious. Do not tell me what to do with my private property.
Yeah, well, that's simple as that. That's normal. I think everybody forgets that we really don't, even though we buy property, we really don't own it. We're stewards temporarily. The property doesn't belong to us in the long run. It belongs to the earth itself. And all we are is temporary stewards of the property. And our job as stewards is to make sure we do the best we can with it so that property passes on to following generations. We're not here to destroy or make a mess out of what we have, which we have a pretty good history of doing.
You're speaking as an environmentalist.
Yeah, and
okay. And well, some people, for those who care about the environment, yes, and others, I mean, we're still debating if global warming is real or not, if climate change is real.
Well, the problem with climate change, and we won't get into it, it's really complicated. It takes thousands of years. It doesn't happen overnight. And I know some people that are in the field that claim that we're in the beginning of an ice age.
And we know what happened to the mammals in the ice age.
Yes.
Okay.
So we really, you can't take a 30 or 40 year time frame and say this is happening, because it takes a long, long time for the real effect. So.
Okay. So this article just for people to be responsible of their private space and to not be a nuisance to their neighbors.
Yeah, and obviously it affects people's personal rights and their own, because again it's their house, their land. They pay taxes on it, so they have a right to certain things, and it's tough because it's almost like maybe government in general keeps interfering too much overall. As we keep going along, we get more and more of 1984 coming up, but this is something where on a daily basis, the Inspectional Services Department probably gets 4 or 5 complaints a day on this type of thing, and they can't do anything, and then the people that complain are all upset. The person who's causing the problem tells you basically, I don't care, and there's no result. So it's like nothing happens.
Now,
and this is not going to be something that they're going to go after every single person everywhere and do something. Only when it's a real extreme case they'll use this.
and how do we justify extreme case?
That's like human stuff. It's basically, you have to look at what it is and make that decision, because there is no black and white answer for that.
So there is, a person can get a storage container, put it in their backyard to store their belongings.
Yep.
And what are we doing with the perimeters of that storage container? We have to put up a fence?
Yeah, in the backyard, you normally have a fence.
Okay.
And if you have a lot of stuff in the front of your house, you can put a fence up in front. I think the rules were it could be 8 to 10 feet. That's a little tall, but that's a possibility of requiring that as well.
Now, what if somebody comes to you and says, okay, I have this, it means a lot to me, a dead car, whatever. I do not have the means to fix it, nor do I have the means to go and get a storage container for now. How much time do we give them to get the problem done?
I guess it will be on a case-by-case basis, because there's really nothing in place that says, because if you're given a violation, you have to take care of it right then and there. Because 24 hours later, they can come back and give you another violation if they want. Normally, they'll give you a reasonable period of time, which could be a week or 2 weeks, whatever.
We recently, Steve Ruiz, our director here, we took a trip to Barnstable, and a very beautiful, beautiful, beautiful town, community. And I'm thinking, if this, we were joking, and Steve said, in this town it's pretty strict. They can even tell you what kind of color you should paint your house.
Yeah, in the historical area. It's like Concord, you have like 3 colors and that's it.
But I'm thinking, if this is what we need in this community in order to shape it up and to organize it so we can see more appealing as our neighboring Upper Cape towns.
Yeah. Well, again, you go through different towns. On the Cape, you have the Cape Cod Commission, which really sets a lot of very tight, difficult rules of business and for residents. If you're in like a subdivision in Wareham, the subdivision is usually has a homeowners association, and they may specify how tall your grass can be. And if you don't, they can fine you or come down and do it and bill you for it. You have to have light on all the time at night in front of a house. You're responsible for the condition of your yard, etc. I have a friend that lives in Indiana and is in a subdivision, which everything is a subdivision there of the county government. And they do actually have a thing about how tall the grass can be. I mean, so.
And I bet it's beautiful, isn't it there?
It's
very uniform.
Everything is the same, and it's clean. There's no trash, etc. Wareham has to make a decision. Do we want to be, and I'm going to get in trouble for this saying, do we want to be like up, the up country in Maine where in everybody's yard they have everything they've ever owned for the last 50 years is sitting in the yard? Or do you want it so it's nice and reasonably? Because you do have a responsibility to your neighbors, I believe, that you should make it so you don't really have the right, I don't think, to, in my opinion, sit there and have the place look like hell and the neighbor next door keeps it really clean. They have the choice, but at the same time, you have to have some concern for your neighbors.
Absolutely.
And I think we forget that we're a race that the only way we function is we function as a group. It's nice to be an individual and everything else, but at the end of the day, it doesn't work a lot of times. So it's a hard thing. I have mixed feelings, because I'm not a real big fan of extreme government control because it scares me. But at the same time, you have to have some control.
Okay, so speaking of some control, the following article wanted the entire control. That was Article 14, Delete Charter Review Committee, by your colleague, Mr. Teitelbaum. And who, after this article, issued 2 apologies, one on Facebook and one under Wareham Week. And Lisa Morales was there to make sure people understand why Teitelbaum had to issue this apology. So, what is Mr. Teitelbaum asking here?
Well, when we go back, 2009, I got appointed I was one of 9 people appointed to the Charter Review Committee by the at that time the current Board of Selectmen. They basically hand chose who they wanted to put on the committee. And the first question was, do you believe the town charter or the type of government needs to be changed? If you answered yes, you got put on the committee. If you answered no, you didn't. So therefore, the committee was stacked in one direction right off the bat, which really was the wrong thing to do, but that's what happened back then. There were 9 highly qualified people on that committee. There was probably, we were put in place for 18 months. The first year, we basically sat down, and unfortunately, 7 out of the 9 people wanted a mayor and town council, which was a drastic change from town meeting. They didn't want to have, they really didn't do a lot of public outreach initially. They didn't get a hold of the stakeholders. They made the mind up ahead of time, and as the chair of that committee, I'm basically there to provide, you know, the agenda and the guidance, but not to tell them what to do. It's their call. And we voted very early on, and I asked that question, and the answer was they wanted to do this. So I didn't think it was going to work, and it didn't, but that's a different story. So we went ahead and did that. We did a really good presentation at town meeting on it, probably the most professional presentation I've ever seen at town meeting. It lost, obviously. And then for the next 6 months, we worked on looking at all the different articles that we had already looked at originally, where we found flaws or changes we thought needed. And I think we came back with between the charter and the bylaws, because things interact with each other, about 45 articles. Some people thought it was kind of excessive, but everyone was legitimate. And I think we got 13 or 14 passed. It was difficult because a good portion of the population coming to the town meeting was very much against the review committee, et cetera, because of the way they've been picked. So it became a political rather than an actual intellectual discussion.
So, yes, political rather than intellectual discussion. Teitelbaum basically, in the nicest words, he just basically called the town people stupid, right? That they do not have the intellectual capability to look at the charter, review it, and make recommendations if they see to.
It's a little more complicated. The problem is that.
But didn't he call them basically, in fairness?
Yeah. All right. I'm not going to disagree. The bottom line is that it's not that simple, because when you make a change, you may affect a bylaw, or you may affect the way the actual things work. So you have to go through all of it. And sometimes when you write something, you don't do enough homework, and when it's done, it actually doesn't work because it doesn't function. So it is more complicated. Someone who is basically versed in law in particular has been trained for all this, because they're the ones who write all these rules. Everything we deal with is done by lawyers, and sometimes I'm not happy about that. So the answer is yes. But if you have a qualified group of people, which the last time we did it, we did, knowing that is, there was a comment made that you can't do it because it requires a certain process. We went ahead and reached out to Compliment and Page, Lauren Goldberg, and she actually gave us time free. We didn't cost the town anything, because that's one of the areas she specialized in, was when, at that time, there were a lot of towns looking to change their government as well. And she explained how we could do this through what they call a special act. So what we did actually was through a special act both times. And the only difference would be is if town meeting had passed, say, the mayor and town council, we then would have had a ballot question that fall, so everybody in town could vote on it. And that would be acceptable, and that would change the government. So what we did actually could be done.
Okay. Now, what I'm saying is, couldn't he have suggested viable solutions, such as if he knows, and it's true that not all of us are lawyers and equipped to digest the language that it's in these charters, couldn't we get counsel or
The answer is yes.
Yes, sounds is yes. So instead of jumping right to we should strike this out from the citizens' reach, could have suggested some solutions here. And of course, the citizens voted completely no on this.
Well, I think that vote was a vote against since the selectmen put the article out, itself, it was really a vote against the selectmen saying that we know better.
Now, instead of the vote against the selectmen saying we know better, you are also selectmen. When this was coming up,
I abstained on the vote.
You abstained. Why?
Because basically I had already been through the process and I had no problem with it.
So, do you agree with Peter or you agree with the vote?
I agree with Alan.
Okay, we got 7 minutes here. Let's dive into your favorite person, Sandy Slavin. You guys are not very nice.
Yes, we are.
No, you're not.
Oh, absolutely.
To the point that Sandy had to put in her own article, Article 23, to remove selectman voice reach out of her articles, out of CPC, because each time she comes to you, or they come to you, you guys, your favorite word is no.
That's not true. She complained about one article. Which
She complained.
about the article on the housing piece there. The problem is the article came before us a couple times, and it was faulty. There was a citizens article and a regular article from them, and it just didn't match. The one issue that we have is we're supposed to make sure that if we're going to use CPC money, it's not frivolous. And when I use the word frivolous, it means it's the best use of the money. At the time, when you sit there and talk about you're going to build 4 units for $400,000, and when it was at that time that the article was flawed, it wouldn't have passed anyways because of the way they did it. So the times it was rejected, it was for reasons like that. It wasn't rejected because they didn't want to do it. The last time it came before us, we voted to put it on the warrant because at that point there, it wasn't flawed anymore.
Now this time she's asking for $650,000 to build 4 units for affordable senior public housing at the Agawam Village site.
Yep.
And you guys voted yes, except for Peter. Right? Peter said no. Peter
Yep.
was the naughty, naughty boy.
Well, that
during
was
the meeting.
because, again, we have this project at Lincoln Road that's a possibility. Again, it could be 2 or 3 years down the road of doing maybe 40 or 50 units.
But according to the housing authority, they said when you give the CPC money or you get these contractors and they agree, let's say, a certain amount of units for affordable housing, they regulate their own prices. So it end up not being affordable to the or matching the needs.
Yeah, what it really is because are you looking at 4 units or 50 units? That's the difference. There's such a demand.
But we can have 50 units and nobody can afford them.
That's not true.
Or, okay, now you're talking about a specific echelon of group that can afford those 50 units, but still you are leaving this below that I can afford those 50 units down.
It depends on how you put it together and what the project is, because you can require that the developer, if the redevelopment authority was going to do this, they can require a developer to have a certain percentage. It's not like a regular straight 40B, which they can play around with. So this really isn't the case. It's just a matter of when you take money, you want to leverage your money to get the best results, the most for the least amount of money you have to put in.
Now, is it a matter of like we do not trust housing authority on that plan, that it wasn't the most efficient plan?
No, it just wasn't, from a standpoint of 600,000 or even 400,000 for 4 units versus maybe $1 million that will generate 40 or 50 units. It's strictly numbers. Okay. And that was the reason only. It wasn't because they didn't want to do it. In the article itself, and I think I'm pretty sure when I got up to speak against it, because it was fun to do that. We always enjoy going back and forth, the two of us. My concern really was that when I think I used the word spot zoning as an example, you can't really take and say this particular committee here, even though it says, under the Community Preservation Act that, stuff should go forward. You can't say this group here, this committee, whatever they want to do, they can bring forward. And even though there's a policy that says the Board of Selectmen and the Finance Committee have to sign off before anybody can actually ask for CPC money. That's already in place there to start with. And then we have the right to, favorable, unfavorable action as well. And that's the basic point there. And we do this for, different town departments that bring stuff forward, et cetera. So if this article was written in such a way as to say, okay, I don't like it, you're controlling my particular committee, but I'm going to write an article that every committee that brings something forward has to go on the warrant. That would be probably acceptable to the Attorney General's office on a charter change. I don't believe the Attorney General, in my opinion only, would have approved this article if we had voted for it.
So Sandy should bring her article back.
If she'd like to, she can.
Did you share this information with her?
I'm not that crazy.
Oh, each time I bring you here, that's how much we need you to be here weekly. And by the way, you said yes to being a weekly guest, right?
Yeah.
You're my Friday guest.
Usually. Remember, Friday is Fun Day Friday.
Well, thank you so much for being here.
It's a pleasure. You know, it's what's tough at town meeting is that we had an article, and I'll do this very quickly, on some pieces of property out on the Charge Pond Road. We get misinformation, or people take information and throw it out, and they confuse, and I'm going to call it misinformation is what it virtually is. The reason that the town wanted to give the property to the redevelopment authority out there was that the Graziano family, who has a small subdivision, has been taking gravel from years there.
Yeah, we got 1 minute.
And they are basically selling the property. The family has decided to get out. And the person, or actually the organization looking at buying it, is probably going to try and bring something very large to the town of Wareham. This property that we're looking to keep will be adjacent to what's going to happen there, and therefore the town could make a substantial amount of income out of this property. That's why we wanted to put it out there. It has nothing to do with the wells or anything, because the chairman of the water department answered, they didn't vote, but we contacted the chairman just to ask him if there's any issue, and he said no. So they came out, I think it was Ms. Morales, said that's an issue with the water. That was not true.
I'll have to bring you back to digest that further.
Yes.
And with Ms. Morales. Thank you, Wareham, for joining us this morning. Yes, we concluded a week, 3 shows, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. You missed us this morning. Do not panic. This episode will re-air this evening at 6 p.m. And that concludes our show for today. Join me on Monday. I believe, yes, either Sandy Slavin will be here to just basically rebuke everything that her husband stated.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us and have a pleasant weekend. Bye.